program are the contents of a recently unearthed repository classified by the secret government, the Phenomenon Archives. In the past century, humanity has been pulled from the furnace of worldwide epidemics and saved from the clutches of military dictatorships by the men and women of science. Now that we've come to consider them almost venerable, what if we were to discover that the attitudes of these professionals have taken a turn toward the darker side? Are the people of science today serving an agenda of integrity, or some vast corporate policy wherein the consumer is the unwitting guinea pig for the testing of profit-making pharmaceuticals?
In December of 1912, Charles Dawson, a lawyer and amateur geologist, announces to the amazement of the world that he has uncovered in a gravel bed near Lewes, England, what appears to be the skull of an ancient human being. The world regales Dawson with the laurels of international celebrity, touting his discovery as the long-sought-after missing link, the evolutionary bridge between ape and man. The British Empire's scientists, who could not previously lay claim to a single major archaeological find, are at last vindicated. The discovery of the Piltdown Man becomes the most prestigious archaeological find of its day. In 1953, nearly 40 years after Dawson's dramatic breakthrough, chemical analysis of Piltdown Man's remains revealed that the very establishment which authenticated the find was duped in one of the greatest deceptions of all time, the Piltdown Man hoax. Ultimately, it is determined that the cranium belongs to a modern human being and the jawbone to an orangutan. Each is skillfully altered to appear prehistoric. The ensuing revision of history books and archaeological reference materials proved costly, but the cost and credibility to the scientific community is inestimable.
There's corruption in any field. I mean, there are great people, and there are people that are somewhat corrupt in any field. Science is no different.
Does fraud occasionally happen? Yes, it occasionally happens.
Oh, God, I could spend an entire day telling you about the science and research fraud that my colleagues and I know about.
The famous case of the Wright brothers, was it the New York Times said that they were committing a fraud the day before they actually flew their plane?
Most of the disciplined rigors of science go on behind closed doors, beyond the inquiring eyes of the public. Nevertheless, scientists in their often solitary quest for new knowledge enjoy an almost hallowed admiration. They are granted a virtual hands-off policy by our modern world to create, advance, and mold the future of civilization.
I think that the society does have the concept that scientists are purer than other people, and they're omniscient, and for that reason, they can do no wrong.
Given this revered social standing, the field of science is now more competitive than ever.
There is enormous pressure on scientists to obtain grant funding. It is very demanding, the process is nerve-wracking for scientists.
In most universities now, you can't really do the research you want to do unless you have funding for it, and funding is more and more difficult to get. So at places like MIT, you have to go where the money is, even to publish.
In the mainstream media of today, tales of science fraud abound.
Some of the most classical cases that I can think of, first was a psychiatrist from Arcadia, California, who falsely claimed that a drug, THA, was a treatment for Alzheimer's, and subsequently that created a tremendous demand for this drug. But he was busted by one of my colleagues at the FDA, who forced him to retract his results.
Another case involves 4 pharmaceutical companies caught making payments to a top government researcher to secure his assistance in accessing confidential research he is conducting at the National Institutes of Health. And in a court of law, one group of industry-sponsored scientists stands behind their shameless, quote, conclusive research, unquote, that cigarette smoking is in no way harmful to human health.
There was a junior researcher at the Harvard Medical School who published 18 major articles and 100 abstracts, most of which were completely bogus. He was fleshed out by another colleague of mine from the National Institutes of Health, Walter Stewart. Stewart was also caught a professor at the University of California at San Diego, who was writing papers at a rate of 1 every 10 days, and they were all based on complete fabrications. He was forced to withdraw and retract 15 of these papers. Unfortunately, the field of science is strewn with cases like this.
There are more than 1 million practitioners of science in the United States alone. These men and women are, for the most part, actively engaged in the advancement of prosperity. Yet critics argue that science is too often done as fast practice. That these same scientists we have learned to depend on are guilty of cutting corners by rushing results in order to get their papers published, have their research ideas funded, and beat out their peers in an ongoing struggle for fame, glory, and financial reward. No, science is not a career for the faint of heart. Does it follow, then, that in a society where financial gain is considered the ultimate praise, the temptation to cheat has become too mighty? Has the reality of science fraud become so commonplace that fudging research is an accepted norm? An astronomer faking the discovery of an unknown star may set planetary science back years, as the Piltdown scam did to the field of archaeology. The ramifications of fudged research in other fields of science, however, foretell a much greater danger to our world and to individual human life.
Well, the whole reason why agencies like the National Institutes of Health, the National Science Foundation, and the Food and Drug Administration, and many others have reviewers to scrutinize the work done by researchers is because of the extreme dangers to the public of faulty research. I'm aware of a number of faulty drug studies that were contaminated and biased either deliberately or unintentionally, testing certain drugs on patients with a variety of ailments that ended up as articles in medical journals only to have been retracted later. If an innocent doctor had read any of these articles, they may well have prescribed that drug to a patient and ended up making things much worse.
Good morning. Do you mind showing your throat to these men?
Medical research and the development of new physical and drug therapies are specialty areas of scientific study. Because the potential financial gains to drug companies working in this arena are so vast, experts complain that the tendency toward conflict of interest is increased. Such has certainly been the case in the area of AIDS research.
We have multiple interest, multi-billion-dollar international companies coming into the field because they see the potential of offering the public all their drugs as the cure. Well, drugs have not been the cure. The drugs haven't been a cure for heart disease. Diet and lifestyle change has been. Drugs have not been the cure for cancer. Prevention has been the cure.
I have just perfected a new remedy for locomotor ataxia. It's taken me years of research.